it's the F Nerd Show, and today I want to talk about Fright Night. So I don't know if anybody has seen the original Fright Night. I have. I love the original Fright Night, but today I want to talk mostly about the remake. But they're both related. Like the plot is exactly the same for both of them, pretty much. But the difference is, uh, I think they lean a little more heavy into some themes that I don't know if they're intentionally present in the original. I think they were some, but they were both more subtly and in some ways more cleverly and more just literally more updated ways of expressing that idea in the new Fright Night. Uh, okay, so Fright Night with Anton Yelchin, Colin Farrell, David Tennant, Imogen Poots, directed by Craig Gillespie, who is a really good Australian director. I watched a movie he did recently, Dumb Money. I liked that a lot. He also did Mr. Woodcock, which I remember I seen that movie a long time ago. I don't know if it's good anymore because it's been a very long time, but it had like Billy Bob Thornton and Sean William Scott. I remember the trailer. That was funny. And he directed I, Tonya and Cruella recently. So he's a great director. I mostly say that because of Fright Night and Dumb Money, uh, and maybe Mr. Woodcock, but well, I don't know. And Lars and the Real Girl, which I haven't seen, but I've seen that at pawn shops. No offense, it's good. Probably. Anyway, Fright Night. What I love about it is about a guy named Charlie Brewster who in this version, he lives in Vegas. I think he just lives in the suburbs in the original version, but this one he lives in Vegas, a Vegas suburb, and he slowly starts to suspect that his neighbor is a vampire, and all this shenanigans ensue. In the original Fright Night was written by Tom Holland, not Spider-Man Tom Holland. He probably is tired of hearing that joke, but he is a horror extraordinaire, Tom Holland. He's directed uh he didn't even direct Fright Night? No, yeah, he did. He directed the original Fright Night. He directed the original Fright Night. He directed the original Child's Play. He directed Thinner, which I saw Thinner on record recorded over VHS once. Uh a long time ago. So and he wrote Child's Play, so maybe he even created Chucky. Did he? Just right quick. Did he create Chucky? Don Mancini created Chucky. Okay. But yeah. Anyway. So Fright Night uh is fun. This movie, it's both of them are really fun. Peter Vincent is also a cool character. In the new Fright Night, Peter Vincent is played by David Tennant. In the original Fright Night, Peter Vincent is played by let's see, Roddy McDowall, and they're both good. They're both different in different ways. In the original, Peter Vincent is whatchamacallit. He's like a TV show host, like a horror show host, like an interstitial host type guy for horror movies. And in this one, he's a he's like Chris Angel Mind Freak. He's a magician in Vegas. Anyway, I keep saying that. This movie, what I love most about it, and what I love about vampire movies in general, is vampire movies do best when they're telling a story about either class or sexuality, I think. Or even drug addiction, but I think class and sexuality are great, are the best, because that's when they get so interesting and minute with some things. Like, you really play around with the idea of uh, sharing blood or giving blood or all this stuff. It's very fun. But what I love about this one is they do it in a different way. A lot of times it might be about like losing your virginity, which that could be a part of it in this movie. It could be about I don't know, gayness, because there's also the blood stuff like when during the 80s with the HIV scares maybe. Uh, I think there are movies like that, like The Lost Boys is about gayness. Uh, what else is there? Lots of stuff. But I'm trying to look at the original Fright Night. There are aspects to it that I do think are related, but I also think there's something about the original Fright Night that involves like being a yuppie, because the neighbor Jerry in the original Fright Night, played by Chris Sarandon, is kind of yuppie-y. like he's like fancy, looks a little rich, but he does woo the women. This movie, I think, is mostly about masculinity and toxic masculinity, and there's a lot of reasons why. Number one, and also, and R.I.P. Anton Yelchin. Uh, he's such a gosh darn star, and it sucks that he died and how he died. It sucked. Uh, he was a star. He was the best. And I'm 28. I just turned 28, and he died at 27. So it's nuts that Anton Yelchin. He probably would have an Oscar right now if he's still alive. It so sucks. I just gotta mention that because it sucks that he died. He has a lot of great movies. Thankfully, he started young. He has a lot of great movies. Just look up his filmography and watch them all because he's good and he's always good. R.I.P. Anton Yelchin. But anyway, let's get back to the story of this movie. What I like about this movie is Anton Yelchin. He plays Charlie. He has a very pretty girlfriend in high school. Well, they're both in high school. Don't get weird. Uh, he's in high school. He has to try. It's sort of established that he's nervous about how he got this lady and trying to maintain an image to keep this lady. Early in the movie, he goes into the high school and meets up with his friend, his weird. I don't even know. They're not really jocks. They're just like weird, cool dude bro guys in high school. It's kind of like the teenagers in 21 Jump Street. It was like just a different era. It's probably different now, way more different. So it's probably not even relatable to some kids these days. I don't know. Uh, but anyway, he keeps pointing out that his shoes are puce, and Chuck Secure. His name's Charlie, and they call him Chuck. But he is then confronted by his ex best friend, Edward Evil Ed Lee. Edward Lee, played by Christopher Mintz-Plasse in this one, and played by somebody else in the original, Stephen Jeffries. But so Ed comes in. He's a nerd. He's like, Charlie, I need to talk to you in the hallways. Charlie doesn't really want to talk to him because he don't want to be seen talking to him because he don't want to be associated with a nerd. Because he's now a cool guy. And he's just trying to be cool and keep his cool girlfriend, bro. Ed tells him, hey, your neighbor, Jerry, he's a vampire. And Charlie at first doesn't believe him, but Ed is so freaked out about it and so concerned. Uh, it does linger in Charlie's head for a minute. And he goes on, and the next day when he goes to school, Ed's gone. And so he has to investigate. That's all I'm going to say about that. But there is another scene, and a scene that is in both movies, when Charlie is with his girlfriend Amy, and they're both in bed, sort of. Amy's there. She sort of just wants Charlie's attention, trying to, get in the bed under the covers, whatnot. But Charlie is just overly concerned about watching what is Jerry doing next door, like looking out his window. And he notices that Jerry's bringing in the hot neighbor that he saw earlier in the movie that I didn't mention. And then there's just this thing about Jerry, the neighbor Jerry. Early in the movie, when Charlie walks up to his house, his mom is just chatting Jerry up, flirting with Jerry. Even when him and Amy walk up to sort of see what's going on between his mom and Jerry, they're like, Amy just sort of beams straight eyes at Jerry, at Colin Farrell, at his gorgeousness and his white tank his white tank top. And then just this whole idea, and then later Jerry's just bringing in the hot neighbor, and it's like, interesting. Jerry is just wooing all the women, and he is just magnifying them into his just view because he's just so goddamn gorgeous. But anyway, then because of this, I think there's two parallels going on. One, the idea of, Charlie trying to maintain an image to try to keep Amy. Meanwhile, he's so obsessed with the idea of, man, but what if I was cooler and trying to, and just able to just just bed the women so easily. And he's just sitting there. And meanwhile, Amy, who is there, is like, hey, I'm right here. Let's do something. Uh, I think it's interesting. It's an interesting thing to play with. The idea of like Charlie being so insecure that he just can't, engage with her because he feels like he's not being his true self in a way, or maybe he's just too obsessed with not messing it up. Uh, and Jerry represents the guy who can do it effortlessly and just knows how to be a man's man, manly man. Anyway, later in the movie, uh, spoilers. I'm sorry. Ed dies. Sorry. And when Ed becomes a vampire, he becomes a vampire. When Ed becomes a vampire, they chase down him. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Charlie then goes seeks out Peter Vincent. He is a magician, Vegas physician that deals with the occult. He goes to meet him under a guise like pretending to be a journalist, and Peter Vincent, he pretends to be a vampire hunter. Like, oh yeah, I got this. I got those vampires. I could do this. But then as soon as he gets him backstage, back into his apartment, he just takes off all his clothes, all his hair, all his stuff. It's all fake. And Peter Vincent, the guy he thought Mike can solve all his problems, is also just a faker, which is like, god dang. Uh, so uh, then while they're there, Evil Ed breaks in. He's like, I'm gonna stink and kill y'all. Shenanigans ensues. Some people die. Women die. Uh, Earlier in the movie, Charlie tried to get his hot neighbor out of Jerry's scary vampire death basement thing, but she died. She got effing killed by the sunlight because she didn't know she was turned. Uh, and then Peter Vincent's assistant dies when Ed comes in and just sort of destroys everything and everybody. Uh, and when Ed is a vampire, what's funny is what he's saying. He's like, "Oh, Bimbo's got some juice," or "Oh, come on, Squid Boy, bring me your lady. You and your lady just gonna go hide and blah blah blah." Like it's, I think it's an interesting idea about male friendships and like when sometimes like maybe it's like two guy friends and then one of the guys starts to date a girl and then they sort of start to get pulled away, which is very much what happened to both of these fellas in this movie. Uh, but also the sort of women hatiness that almost spawns from that in a way, and in general. And I think Ed represents the ultimate ugliness of that because he gets effed up. He gets his arm cut off. He gets a mace to the face and the neck, and his head half cut off. He represents the ugliness, like what this behavior actually turns you into. Being a vampire doesn't make you cool. It doesn't make you into Jerry. All it does is make you to a gross little incel man guy, which is what Ed turned into. But then Charlie kills him, mercy kill. Even Ed is like, "It's okay, Charlie, it's okay." Almost like I would think Ed doesn't like the fact, like what the being a vampire turned him into. Also, he did lose an arm, and he was like, "Look, it's either you killed me or I was gonna die with like this." So f that. Uh, anyway, moving on. One last thing, Jerry. Uh, so Jerry hypnotizes Amy and takes Amy away. There is a big deal about like Jerry earlier in the movie. He's like, uh, I don't know if you've noticed, maybe you do, but there's a neglect gives off a scent. Your mother, she's putting it out, and your girlfriend, oof, she's ripe. So gross, such gross talky behavior. And I think it's kind of similar to like the idea of like the Andrew Tate stuff in a way, like the idea of being like an alpha male, and I think that's what Jerry sort of represents in a way. And what's crazy is I don't think this sort of stuff like we didn't have an Andrew Tate back then. It's just funny that Andrew Tate sort of has become this symbol of that in a way of like the guy who thinks he has to be the ultra douche man guy. Uh to to get ahead at all in life in general. Uh, Fun idea. And what happens is Jerry kidnaps Amy. Uh, Peter Vincent gives Charlie a stake that if he can stab Jerry before Amy uh, drinks blood for the first time, it will undo the curse. I think there's something there also, this weird obsession. Like when Jerry said, your girlfriend, ooh, she's ripe. And then later, when he has Amy sort of half amped up, she's like, he's like, I had to pluck that. And just sort of this, see what I'm saying? Like this gross idea of like, uh, I don't know, like deflowering a lady or something, all this jazz. It's very interesting, very interesting. Uh I don't know how the steak is just a steak. But anyway, what does Charlie do to save the day? Him and Peter Vincent, they go in, they sort of are like, I'm gonna bust up in there, I'm gonna go save Amy, kill him, stab him in the heart with this thing. What happens is they sort of get cornered, they're surrounded, and then Jerry uh sort of, I don't know. He sort of tackles Charlie. No, that's what happens. So Charlie had this fun idea of lining himself with gasoline, and he had like protective suit and everything, but he wanted to get close enough. But fire's like their biggest weakness. The vampire's biggest weakness is fire and the sunlight, obviously. Uh, but he also needs to stake him in the heart to maybe save Amy and whatever other half vampires that are left that are also high school kids that they should probably save. So what happens is lights himself on fire. He goes and gives Jerry a big old hug. Uh, and Jerry crisps up just enough to where he could see his heart, and he stabs him right in the heart with the stake, saving the day and becoming the hottest man of the day. But seriously, though, symbolism there. The idea of he literally had to become physically hotter than Jerry to beat Jerry. Not really, but actually. But it is an interesting idea. Like, just this idea of what his hotness had to like, I don't know. While I think the metaphor does get lost a little bit in saying that, because it's like, what, he had to get hot? No, I think it's also him just sort of embracing all that stuff, like all that vampires like lore stuff. I kind of wish they did a little bit more. Like the fact that he's wearing a costume, I think, is symbolic of him sort of embracing his nerddom a little bit more. It's almost like, you know, being like, all right, I got the crossbow, I got these cool combat boots instead of the puce. I got I'm wearing this mask and some goggles, and I'm gonna just kill a vampire. Uh, that is pretty cool, and maybe that is symbolism of him embracing his nerd a little bit more. I do wish maybe his end, like, they have this whole bit of him being Squid Boy and Ed being some other guy, some other guy. I forget, but maybe like if his vampire killing outfit like was identical to a Squid Boy outfit, it could have been a little bit more symbolic. But whatever, doesn't matter. Anyway, that's it. That's a spiel. I think Fright Night is about toxic masculinity. Jerry represents that uh, because he is just like, he just sort of uses women, disregards them all the time, uh, and looks at them as objects to be drained. Uh, and Charlie is just a guy who's just not ready, or not quite ready to, I don't know, do anything too crazy, too serious, because he's scared of being himself, because he's too worried about trying to be so masculine or so cool to Amy. There's even a scene in uh when his mom is in the hospital where Amy is like, Charlie, I knew you were a dweeb. What, you think I want a guy like Ben or Mark or whatever? Uh like Dave Franco? You think I want a guy like Dave Franco? No. I want you, Anton Yelchin. You weird nerd. Uh but yeah. I do like it. I do, and I also like sort of the idea of all this pressure amongst the men about what the women are doing is just an interesting idea. And then when it came down to Charlie and Amy having a conversation about it, it gets solved. Like I think there's something to that also. You know, and also Charlie's mother is very interesting. You know, in early in the movie, she's like, you know, getting what you want isn't always what it's cracked up to be. Because, you know, Charlie is with the hot, popular girl, but he's also like worried about it all the time. And it's just very interesting. Okay. All right. And also, there's one more thing. Early in the movie, when, with the neighbor lady, she had the word lucky on her butt. And Charlie looked at it. And his mom said, don't leave the neighbors. And he said, she put the word on her butt. I'm just reading it. I think there is something about that too, like the objectification of women, like, and maybe it means something that his mom was like, "Hey, quit staring." Uh, I don't know. That's it. That's all I got. Please go watch Fright Night. Uh, it's one of Colin Farrell's greatest performances because he really gets to chew up the scenery as Jerry. Anton Yelchin is really good and also really cool at the end. David Tennant is really funny and not over like David Tennant's Peter Vincent is used to the perfect amount of where it's like he is a goof, but he's also a cool goof. And he also has an arc, which in the original Fright Night he's just straight up normal. Like that's what I do like. So like in the original Fright Night, he is just sort of an actor, but he does have a little bit more knowledge, I think. Whereas this one is just like he bought a bunch of stuff, and maybe some of it works, maybe some of it doesn't. We don't really know. We do know he did actually do some vampire research, but yeah, whatever. Oh, one last thing. The idea of it, because there's this whole thing about Jerry maybe killing Peter Vincent's parents. I didn't love necessarily that connection, but I also like the idea of, uh, what if the idea of Jerry, the idea of this toxic masculinity, killing families, like the movie opens with the death of Adam's family. That's funny. And then the second murder we learn about is of Peter Vincent's family. Like maybe it's about the idea of like this toxic masculinity infiltrating these families and ruining these families, and then you know what maybe it ultimately becomes. Maybe that's just me putting stuff into it. I don't know. I just wanted to say that because it's an interesting idea and like interesting theme. Like what's with all these families getting killed? Uh, yeah. Also, I do wonder what happened to Evil Ed's parents, if they're alive or not. Alright, goodbye. Like, comment, subscribe. Goodbye.